G'day everyone, Germanos from Alliance Accounting. We've got the wonderful Karen Hillen from GTK Human Resources here with us. G'day Karen.
Hi George, how you going?
Well, thank you. Karen's popped into our office today in Liverpool, and thank you Karen for that. She's popped in to give us some great tips about human resources, some pitfalls to look out for. She's got some great stories and hopefully she'll be of great use to you. So Karen, what have you got to tell us today?
I thought I'd just talk to you a little bit about the very basics of HR in relation to the things that you really need to be aware of when you're, say, employing somebody for the first time, or even if you do have a few employees and you don't really have any structure in place.
Yeah.
So things like employment contracts, for instance, even when you're starting and you're only employing one person, a lot of the time people will think, oh, I don't really need one, it might be a friend or something like that. It is really important because it sets the expectations right from the beginning. So whether you do have one employee or, anything above that, it's really important to be able to set the expectations so you're clear on what you expect from the person and they know exactly what to expect.
I think one thing that we see is that people forget to keep business commercial. So even though you're hiring a family member or a friend or anyone at all, unfortunately down the line something will happen. So you need to keep it commercial so you've got something to fall back on, and not only for yourself but also for the employee.
That person. Absolutely, and I think that's the thing often when a small business is employing somebody for the first time, it tends to be a family member or a friend. Unfortunately, a lot of those relationships will turn sour because of something in the business relationship, and it usually is a misunderstanding or something that wasn't clear from the start.
Exactly.
An example, I had somebody contact me probably about a month ago. They were having a problem with somebody who had left their organisation and was asking for particular things in relation to payments made after termination. So I started asking a few questions and the person didn't even know whether they were employing the person as a part-time casual or full-time employee. It was a friend. There was no employment contract and there were really no expectations set up front. So neither party had any idea of what was expected in relation to the hours of work.
Exactly, and unfortunately when that employee, for example, expected to go into a workplace being treated as an employee and being paid fairly as an employee. Yeah,
and in this situation, I think a lot of the time too, small business, they're not too sure in relation to what the rate of pay might be. So a lot of the time, accidentally, they will be underpaying somebody because they're not 100% sure. They say, look, I'll pay you $15 an hour. The person says, yeah, that sounds great. Exactly. And, especially if that's a casual rate, that's way below any award.
I mean, even if it's not way below, even if the award rate is only $15.50 an hour, 50 cents isn't a lot, but when you go for 2-3 years paying someone 50 cents an hour, it can really add up to several thousand.
Absolutely, and there are lots of cases on the Fair Work Ombudsman site and the Fair Work Australia or Fair Work Commission site that give cases about where that has actually happened, and quite often in the news you will see where a particular employer has had to pay sometimes hundreds of $1,000s worth of back pay because inadvertently they've been paying people the wrong rate of pay. And I think especially in small business, most businesses don't go out to rip someone off. They're just not 100% sure of that, and I think being able to have somebody that you can get that advice off is really important because you're running your business, and whether it's accounting as your business is, or it's a shop or an online business or whatever, you're busy doing what you're good at.
That's right.
You're not 100% sure even where to look on the Fair Work website if you actually start looking on there for even the right awards.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's funny how much red tape there is for small business. We used to joke that 30-40 years ago you could fit the number of laws into maybe one book. Now you'd need a whole room to fit the number of laws. So it's best for a business owner to do what they're great at doing and leave the other things to the professionals.
Absolutely, and I think that's the thing, for a HR consultant, or even somebody who specialises in payroll. We know where to look, we know where to go, where we keep ourselves up to date in relation to changing legislation, and it does change a lot. So we know where to look, and we can find that information quite quickly rather than have a business owner spend possibly half a day looking for that stuff.
Exactly. Even still, like you said, half a day, you might take half an hour to provide that advice because you know where to look, whereas a business owner might take 4 or 5 hours. If they had provided that put that 4 or 5 hours into doing their actual work, they'd double their return on what they would have paid you.
Yeah. So it really is important just to have that structure in place, no matter how small you are. I suppose one of the things I quite often talk about is once you've got one employee, you need at least an employment contract or an employment letter. You also need at least a code of conduct as well. So again, you're setting the expectations of what you expect for your employees. So how they represent you and your business, how they dress, all of those sorts of things as well. One of the other things I quite often say to people too, in relation to once you have 2 employees, you've got a potential for conflict. So then you should start looking at things like a disciplinary policy or at least a grievance procedure. So your employees know what to do and who to go to if they've got an issue with a workplace dispute or harassment or bullying, for instance.
I mean, we were talking about, before this video, we were talking about social media. Social media has really blown up in that everyone is on it, everyone is using it. And we were talking about the importance of having a social media policy. And we went through a story of a court case in the US where a employee of a large company actually opened a social media account for that large company, built the database, and then that employee was terminated. And what happened was, because he opened the social media account using his email, he took the account with him. So it ended up being in court as to whose account was it and whose database, who was the owner of that database. And as you mentioned, if that's addressed in the social media policy, it would have saved the hundreds of thousands in the court case and saved the time.
Those things can be covered, but also just your very basic behavioural sort of expectations in relation to social media.
What are some important policies, for example, that people should look out for?
I suppose in relation to social media, making sure your employees understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate to put on social media. And I'm not talking about your own business page, I'm talking about their own personal page. So they understand what's appropriate in relation to what they post on their own social media page, because people have actually been dismissed for what they've put on their own Facebook page. There are quite a few cases out there that you can look up in relation to dismissals that have been through Fair Work Australia, and those decisions have been upheld because of the inappropriateness of what people put on Facebook, and also that they had very good social media policies in place.
And as you mentioned earlier, it's not only to protect the employer, it protects the employee. They know what they can and can't do.
I think that's the thing with policies, procedures, codes of conduct, even your employment contract or letter. It gives the employee a really good understanding of what you do expect as an employer. So they feel that they've got something to go back on. Having a position description is really important as well, because then if you're an employee, you've got a position description, you know what to do. You know what your job entails. Sometimes, I've had people in small business say, well, the admin girl I've got, her job's just to do everything. That may be true, but it's really good to have a bit of guidance around what that everything is. So it is important to have a position description.
Surely it's not to walk the dog. Well, at least you don't think so.
No, and I suppose if it is, that should be in there. So it's important for both parties, and I think a lot of the time for job satisfaction too. If an employee has a position description that they can work to, it gives them a certain amount of satisfaction when they know they're doing a good job in relation to that position description. And going further, they may have KPIs that they have to meet, or another thing that's really important is having a performance plan. So whether some people call it a career development plan or performance appraisal plan, having regular meetings with your employees in relation to how they're going in the position and what they might want as development, and also what they can suggest for improvements for your business as well.
So the benefit of that is not only the fact that you get improved performance from your employees, but they get self-satisfaction. They've got challenges to meet. So that keeps the workplace interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's one thing. We all would love to get the absolute maximum amount of money for doing a job as an employee as possible, but it's not always about a pay rise. A lot of surveys and data that's out there suggests that employees really do value other things like training, development, even acknowledgement. So those things are really important. And I can remember back probably 15 years ago, a supervisor I had thanked me every afternoon for coming to work and doing a good job. And I still remember her, and I really valued that because it was genuine. It wasn't her business. She was a preschool teacher in a childcare centre that I worked at in admin, and she genuinely thanked me every day for coming and doing a good job, and that meant a lot.
Yeah, of course it would, of course. I mean, in the end, I guess what we're trying to get at is that not only in HR, in everything, business, everything commercial, it is best to leave things commercial so that both parties have an understanding, so there isn't just a general handshake. I mean, if a relationship works so well, we hire employees on the basis that we hopefully trust them, that they'll work in our interest, that they enjoy their work, but 4 or 5 years down the track, you never know what happens, and you've kind of forgotten what you agreed on when you first started.
Definitely. So if you've got an employment contract to go back to, then your memory, you're not thinking,
relying on your memory.
What did I say? What was the original agreement? Did I say that he could have every Friday afternoon off? Did I say he could come in when he felt like it? All of those sorts of things that may creep into the employment relationship as the employee gets more comfortable. And if you're already friends, sometimes, I'm not saying everybody would do this, but sometimes people might start taking advantage of the friendship.
And they might not know. They'll just think that they're just being friends.
So having the expectations in writing right from the beginning is so important, because I think a lot of the time there are no misunderstandings then, and you're able to go back and say, well, this is what we agreed on, and then you're able to work past that rather than have a lot of grey area that usually doesn't end well.
Exactly. I mean, talking about long-term relationships, laws are changing so quickly and relationships change so quickly. How often should people, seek help or look to review their policies, their contracts and what have you?
It's, I think, a good idea to review at least every 12 months. For instance, the policies and procedures that I provide a service within that 12 months. If there are any legislative updates, I actually update them as part of the package. But it's also a good idea to review those every 12 months. If your business grows, you might need to put in a couple of extra policies or procedures. Or you might decide that there are a couple of policies there that need tweaking. So it's a good idea probably every 12 months to review. Employment contracts probably not so often, because if you set the expectations and it's a good contract to start with, probably the only time you have to review that is if you're reviewing pay. And sometimes that will be based on performance or
or if the employee's role's changing or what have you. Fantastic.
Reviewing position descriptions is really important as well. They should be done regularly, at least every 12 months. So for instance, have you got a position description for your own job?
No, I don't. I think I'm the person who does everything.
I think that's the thing too, when you are a small business and you don't employ anybody or even a few people, your position description probably is to do everything. It's a really good idea to write it down, because then as you do start employing people, if that's what you want to do, you can start pulling things out of that position description and give to other people. So,
I mean, in the end, it's good to commercialise your own role, in that if you were looking to sell, or if something wants to happen to your business, you've actually got a role in itself. So that's why we always say it's important for an owner to get paid from the business as an employee. What that shows is that the owner is truly an employee, hence why it would be important to have position descriptions. Fantastic. And for example, in terms of policies, I can see how it is beneficial to review every 12 months, because, for example, a social media policy a decade ago would have been useless. It was basically nothing. Have you got anything else to add? I guess, how can people get in contact with you?
People can contact me on my website. It's www.gtkhumanresources.com.au. or my number is 1300 662 399. So I'm always happy to take calls, or you can make an inquiry through the website. One of the things I've got coming up too is a subscription-based website where people will be able to join and have access to a lot of great up-to-date information, as well as policies, procedures and documents.
Fantastic. And so people can get in touch with you for consultations as well as documentation.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you could offer to businesses?
Yeah, probably the other thing, if you have, I suppose, a larger employee base, we have staff satisfaction surveys, so you can measure your employee engagement. And that can also result in a HR plan where you can look at what improvements you may need to do over a 12-month plan.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thanks.
So that's Karen Hillen from G2K Human Resources, and I'm Germanos from Alliance Accounting. My number is 1300 135 918. Feel free to subscribe and keep on watching. Thank you.
Thanks.